Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Great America Show. Great to have you with us. A lot of great news out of the Supreme Court over the past couple of weeks. Among the biggest stories and rulings, the High Court granting President Trump immunity. The second, the Supreme Court delivering a major blow against the corrupt Biden Department of Justice, overturning the use of those 1512C obstruction charge cases in the January 6th cases. It was a massive win for political prisoners in the D.C. gulag who've been overcharged and oversentenced by the Department of Justice and the U.S. Judiciary. Our first guest today is a man who's been on the front lines fighting to defend those January 6 political prisoners. He's attorney Joe McBride. He's a great American, and he has been in the trenches fighting for the constitutional rights of these prisoners and for this great constitutional republic. Joe McBride, welcome, and again, our thanks. I want to get your reaction because in this overwhelming Supreme Court ruling, historic, the clear-cut issue is on the 1512 USC order to simply put forward the idea that it is not in effect for these J6 prisoners. And I know there's still litigation to go. I know there are many questions to be answered, but this looks like a win for those January 6 defendants and prisoners of the Biden Department of Justice.
Yes, truth indeed, Lou. Lou, first and foremost, thank you for having me. I appreciate all the work that you've done over the course of your life, your continued service and patriotism to this country. It stands out amongst all the debauchery and the communism, the mainstream media, even some people online. You're a pillar. I've looked up to you for a long time, and I always appreciate the opportunity to come on your show and to talk with you. And regarding the 1512 charge, this is something that we have been saying was constitutionally improper since day one. The 1512 charge has to do with document shredding, Enron litigation. Enron, they shredded documents in anticipation of litigation. That's what the 1512 was designed to protect against. It is not designed to persecute and prosecute protesters. So we were saying since day one, hey, number one, there's structural and problems with this law, the way that's written. Number two, the intention behind the legislators when they wrote this law, they could have never foreseen it being applied to January 6 protesters or any protesters for that matter, which is why it was never applied to anybody ever before January 6. So we have been talking about it. Every judge on the D.C. court, with the exception of Judge Nichols, stood against us and told us that we were wrong. The D.C. Circuit stood against all of us and certainly stood against Mr. Fisher, told him that he was wrong. But the case went up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court could have sliced it and diced it a bunch of different ways. They decided to drill down on the applicability of the law and to say, hey, this applies to what we're going to call paperwork crimes. And unless a January 6er went to the Capitol with the specific purpose of disrupting or destroying documents related to the certification process and did indeed do that, if he didn't do that, then he's off the hook. If they did do that, then they're going to be on the hook. Which January 6er did that? Not a single person. So in practice, this is going to get the vast majority of the people off. The DOJ is probably going to try to shape and smooth it in their way because they just don't know how to lose. But at the end of the day, this is a massive win for January 6ers, for Mr. Fisher, and for all of us attorneys who have been saying that this has been wrong since day one.
Well, Joe, it's just an extraordinary moment in history where we're watching the illegitimate committee formed by Nancy Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi. There isn't a leg to stand on here that I can see, certainly. I'll leave it to you attorneys to litigate. But the reality is, on any basis of common sense, decency, and the American system of the rule of law, I can't see how it could possibly prevail against the constitutional rights of these hundreds of January 6 prisoners. And what a great statement by the Supreme Court to uphold the Constitution and the law against political abuse of power by the Biden regime. Your thoughts?
Well, I agree with you 100%. We're seeing the wisdom and the foresight of our founding fathers who left despotism, who left an autocratic ruler, an absolute monarch in England. And when they came over here, they knew full well the evils that could take place if one person or one branch of government got too strong, which is why they set up a system of checks and balances. And we're seeing here, and as we have also seen historically, the Supreme Court rebuke and slap down the presidency, and the Supreme Court rebuke and slap down Congress. We saw it with the overturning of Plessy versus Ferguson and Brown v. Board of Education, with all the civil rights litigation. We've seen it at other times, other pivotal times throughout the course of this powerful and wonderful country. And we're seeing it again now. We're seeing that the Supreme Court is the last and greatest hope of making sure that an executive who vertically integrates his power and politicizes the criminal justice system, and then works in concert to prosecute political dissidents and the reigning defending champion who's going to be the next, potentially the next president of this country, Donald J. Trump, right? They've been persecuting the little man. They've been persecuting the big guy. Supreme Court says, you know what? You've got to wait for this long. You can't do it anymore. We rebuke you. We shut you down in the name of freedom, in the name of fairness, in the name of democracy, and with the power of the Constitution. So it's a great and wonderful and powerful thing. And a lot of us are sleeping a lot better at night knowing that this happened. Especially
those prisoners of this totalitarian regime. An extraordinary moment in a storm of history in America. And thank God for that storm in this court, as you said. I want to turn to your organization, how people watching you and listening to you right now can support the defense of these January 6th political prisoners of the Marxist left. Where can they send their donations to? Where can they find out more about what you and other attorneys are doing for the other defendants of January 6th?
I appreciate that, Lou. So for those of you who are able to contribute financially, you can go to McBrideLawNYC.com. That is McBrideLawNYC.com. Just look for the January 6th tab. There'll be instructions on how to give there. All of my clients have needed help. We have crowd funded and crowd raised almost 100% of everything that we have done, that we're going to continue to do for these great people. It's very important. Your help is really appreciated. Those of you who can't help financially, please help us with your prayers. And for information, the best place to go is to my social media, which you can find on X, or formerly Twitter, or Instagram. I am McBride Law NYC across all social media platforms. Give me a follow there, and that's where you'll be able to find the latest, greatest, most breaking news with regard to the stuff that we're doing globally and specific to my clients.
Joe McBride, you're a great American. Thank you for all you're doing for this country and for all of these January 6th political prisoners. Coming up next, after this quick break, we'll be joined by Trump advisor, former Department of Defense official Kash Patel. Stay with us. We're coming right back with much more.
Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals you can trust. And their new medical emergency kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. This medical emergency kit contains an assortment of life-saving medications, including ivermectin, Z-Pak. Rest assured, knowing that you have emergency antibiotics, antivirals, and antiparasitics on hand to help you and your family stay safe from whatever life throws at you next.
Thanks for staying with us. Joining us now is Kash Patel. Kash, thanks for joining us. Your reaction to the Supreme Court decision itself, if you would, and where we head now, because this is, it seems to be a determinant event in American history that will decide not only who the next president is, but whether our constitutional republic itself survives.
Well, Lou, it's great to be with you. And look, I think you have had it right this entire time because you are a man who understands how our Constitution works and how to follow the rule of law, which is the thing you and I are in violent agreement about. And so many other Americans are as well. So the Supreme Court got it right. We've said it all along. Every president has full presidential immunity. Not some of them, not just Democrats, not just Republicans, all of them, going back to our entire history and going forward through the rest of our history. And so this court ruling speaks a vindication for constitutionalists like you and myself and so many millions of other Americans. And I think the mainstream media's response, the radical left's rapid fire response to this decision just buoys its validity. They're talking about doing unconstitutional things to a constitutional court. They want to impeach the justices now for doing what? Their jobs and following the rule of law. They want to impeach the justices and take down the Trump machine because they say Donald Trump's actions were unconstitutional. And I'm just happy as a former DOJ lawyer and a guy who loves the law to see our Supreme Court finally work. And the radical left could not be more apoplectic with how the law has been applied to President Trump because they are the ones that created the fictitious legal system to take him down.
And the politics of this thing are becoming absolutely bizarre. Suddenly, we're hearing that Hunter Biden, the president's son, who is on trial and for corruption, straightforwardly, is now sitting in on White House meetings. That's as of today. Where is the security clearance? What are the standards that this administration, in this moment of obvious desperation, where are those standards, and why in the world isn't someone in the national media in this country, the corporate media, talking about these critically important issues and insisting on the highest standards of governance to be set forth by the Biden regime? It's as if they have some sort of immunity from the law itself. Joe Biden, Merrick Garland, and Jack Smith. I mean, it's outrageous.
Yeah, and I apologize. I didn't mean to laugh at you just there, but I just let in the absurdity of what you just said. There's a federal convicted felon sitting next to the commander-in-chief of the United States, giving him advice on everything from our national security, the border, the CCP, the Ukraine, the Russians, and so much other information. And the logbooks will show how much time Hunter Biden is spending there at his secondary home, the White House, and making it his command center. But you're right. The mainstream media is missing on this one. It's not a surprise. But if we had a convicted felon who was sitting next to Donald Trump when he was president, who happened to be his son, they would have lost their minds. And right now, America has been as rudderless as we have been. And the Biden administration and the Biden family in particular have just shown us how much regard they have for our Constitution and our law. And it is zero. All they care about is the fame, the headlines, the planes, the cars, and Dr. Jill running around the country pretending she is the next iteration of Madonna for the radical left.
It's my turn to laugh. Dr. Jill is Madonna, is thought to behold, but I'm going to move on from it. Let's turn to the question of whether the president will drop out of the race. A straightforward question. Reporters shouting that question to Joe Biden, he wouldn't respond to it. There is no regard, respect, or response even, reply even, to the president of the United States by the national mainstream media. He is held in obvious contempt if by the New York media. Really, it's insane that they would not insist upon answers to their questions, and the White House feel an obligation to respect the public's right to know in this country.
Well, this is nothing new from Joe Biden's White House. Answering questions of consequence has been something they have been completely have an aversion to their entire time. And the most consequential question for this White House after the debate disaster of Joe Biden is simply, are you going to run again, as you put it? And I don't know the answer to whether or not he's going to run again and say no. I do believe the Democratic machine has implemented a situation where they're going to take Joe Biden out. Now, whether that is at the convention of the Democratic Party in August or beforehand via threatening to utilize the 25th Amendment, I don't believe, and I haven't believed in a long time, that Joe Biden was going to be the nominee. And I think that's why he refuses to face the music and answer these tough questions, because he will just provide us with more ammunition and evidence to show that he is not fit for the job.
He's not fit for the job. How do you think it plays from here? The president, obviously, President Donald J. Trump, the 45th president of the United States, has a clear path forward to victory on November 5th of this year. But it is unclear what will happen. Will indeed President Biden, will he withdraw his nomination? Can he legally do so? Can, as a matter of political tradition in the United States, can he do so? And what do you think will be the implications and the reaction of the Marxist Dems to all that they now see before them? And that is a president who is not only corrupt, but frankly so cognitively impaired and incapable of fulfilling the demands of that very demanding job as commander-in-chief.
Well, Lou, you raised such a great legal point. Can Joe Biden even withdraw? Because he has already ascertained 90% of the delegates necessary to receive the nomination of the Democratic Party through the so-called democratic process. How undemocratic and unlawful would it be for the Marxist Dems to come in and hijack that process away from the American citizens who voted to have Joe Biden be their candidate? That is a huge issue if it's even legal. Now, the answer to that from the Marxist Democratic stance is they don't care about the rule of law. They'll write a new rule of law. They'll make something up, and they'll have the mainstream media, who is bought and sold by the radical left-wing party, to have their backs and say, "Oh no, in this instance, we can do this. It's necessary for the constitutional republic in the United States of America." And so they will rewrite history, and whether they pull him or force him to bend the knee or use his son's commutation as leverage, I'm not sure which compilation of things is going to go into play, or the 25th Amendment, but I just don't think Joe Biden is going to make it. And they'll come up with a narrative to bury that outright hijacking of the democratic process.
And the Democratic presidential nomination. Is that your view?
Yes, absolutely. I think by that time of the convention, we will see another candidate.
Any thoughts as to who that might be, and how severe the Republican Party's resistance would be to such an outrage?
Well, my first thought is Lou Dobbs for the job. He's the only man that can do it. But in all honesty, I think they'll probably go to a Gavin Newsom, one of these former governors, and maybe even, and don't fall over, Hillary Clinton.
This to replace Joe Biden.
Yeah. Yes.
Kash, we appreciate it. Thanks so much. And it's going to be an extraordinary moment in our history these next few months. And we thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Kash Patel.
Thanks so much. Happy 4th.
Thanks to Kash Patel and to Joe McBride for being here today and for being with our political prisoners in the D.C. gulag for all these months and years. And thank you for joining us. Be sure to join us for Lou Dobbs tonight at an all-new time, 8 p.m. Eastern on Frank Speech, Rumble, Roku, and X. Thank you, everybody, and God bless you, and may God bless America.